And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus on this snowy Tuesday, December 9th. It's 1:07 in the afternoon. I'm Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki, along with our Ag Director, Bridgette Readel. And Bridgette, well, you're at home today, working from the home studio, and probably a good thing. This is one of those days where, if you don't have to go out, probably a good idea just to stay put, because road conditions are not good. That's an understatement.
Looking at road conditions across the state, in some areas it's improved as we've looked at the, going from absolutely no travel advised, etc. Now, areas around Bismarck are showing wet highways instead of icy. So, has it transferred over and to rain and warmed up? What's happening out west?
Yeah, it has. In fact, west of Jamestown, you're good to go. Just wet roadways as temperatures have risen at or above freezing west of Jamestown. Between Jamestown and Valley City on 94 there are some snow-covered roads with slippery travel there as temperatures just about at the freezing mark. But from Fargo northward, eastward, and south, we're looking at snow-covered roads, especially between Fargo and Hillsboro. We're looking at some pretty nasty-looking road conditions. We do have another band of heavy snow that is approaching from the northwest. In fact, areas between Cooperstown and Fargo, out around the Arthur area, some bands of some moderate to heavy snow. That's about ready to move into the FM area. Still some moderate snow stretching from Grand Forks down through DL. And if you're going south on 29, we're looking at temperatures down in the far southern valley in the low 30s. So we're not really looking, I know, like you said earlier, Bridgette, Lisbon areas, Lemoore, Ellendale, no travel advised, and that's been lifted. Still some slippery travel down there, but even those areas will be warming up at or just above the freezing mark to help melt some of that junk on the roadways. Now, as we head towards about 3:30, the snow in the FM area and points southward will lighten up. In fact, we may shut the precip off for a short period of time as the area of low pressure comes close enough where it's going to shut the precip off for around the FM area and points southward, but continuing to our north and out into Lakes Country. And then as that area of low pressure pivots southward, we get on the back side of that, and that is when our winds are really going to ramp up after about 5, 6 o'clock tonight. We'll start with those winds out of the northwest, and they'll be increasing 30 to 50 miles an hour. So what freshly fallen snow we have, that's going to be blowing all over the place, and more than likely, we're going to have near blizzard conditions in the northern valley and into Lakes Country after about 7 o'clock tonight. That's when the winds really start to ramp up. So travel is not going to be recommended going north or going east as we head into, let's say, 7 o'clock and onwards. So probably one of those nights just to stay put. The winds will lighten up a little bit, and the snow will wind down after midnight, but don't expect sharp improvement, that's for sure. And then we'll quiet things down as we head into Wednesday with cloudy skies and temperatures generally in the teens. And then another disturbance rides our way Thursday with a little light snow. Nothing like this. About an inch of snow on Thursday with highs in the teens. And then Arctic air pours in as we head into next week with temperatures or in this weekend as temperatures drop off into the single digits above and below zero. The good news is by early next week, I know it's hard to believe, we'll be in the 30s to near 40, even with the fresh snow cover. A quick warm-up as we head into next week. And we'll have a few days next week that where we'll have temperatures actually above normal, and we'll be able to melt away a little bit of this junk, I guess you could call it out there. I shouldn't call it junk. A lot of people love it. I mean, it's cold for ice making, additional snow for snowmobilers. So this is why we live here, right? Is because of the wonderful winter weather.
So it is December. This is where we live. This is what happens. And being careful on the roadways really counts. So hopefully by tomorrow morning's commute, we have given people enough time such as snowplows, sanding crews, etc., to get a jump start on it so we don't all rush out there and slide right into the ditch first thing in the morning.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And luckily the winds it'll still be breezy tomorrow morning, and we'll still have some light blowing and drifting, but nothing like what's around the corner here between about 6 o'clock and midnight tonight. It's that's when things are really going to go downhill quickly for areas that got the snowfall. And I've had a few questions. How much snow are we expecting when this is all said and done? Here in the FM area, probably up to 4 inches. Can't be, that seems reasonable. Down to the south in the far southern valley, really not much at all, an inch or less. You go up towards Grand Forks, Thief River, DL, and again, those areas, 4, 6, 7 inches, probably closer to 6, 7 inches off to our north and east into Lakes Country. So a little more problems with blowing and drifting to our north and into Lakes Country, but no blizzard warnings or anything like that issued yet. But again, I think the National Weather Service is going to wait and see exactly how this unfolds this evening. But trust me, if no blizzard warnings are issued, it's going to be near blizzard or blizzard-like conditions, especially in open areas after about 6, 7 o'clock tonight. So please keep that in the back of your mind. If you don't have to go anywhere this evening, hold it off until tomorrow. That's probably your best bet.
For those who have been in places today, whether you've been traveling at short distances, etc., it would be great if you could give us some indication of what the roads are like. And you can do that by calling the JLA insurance phone line. You can reach us at 701-293-9000. We truly appreciate those phone calls. You can, if you're shy and you want to be able to just send an email, our inboxes are powered by Superior Grain Equipment. You can find them superiorbins.com for grain storage, drying, and handling solutions. Dean's email address is weather@flagfamily.com. Mine is ag@flagfamily.com. And additionally, excuse me, we have our live stream brought to us by Lighthouse Commodities, and that would be on Facebook, YouTube, Acres TV. You can find it, WDAY, Weather and Ag in Focus, in those locations. We appreciate Progressive Ag Risk Management Specialists doing our weather sponsorship today. Thanks to them for helping us out.
And yes, we've got a couple of guests coming up today as well. We've got Max Steffes on the auction block. He'll be joining us here shortly after our next break. And then Dr. Emily Fox will join us at the bottom of the hour. So a busy day today. And once again, if you just joined us, I got a text from John, our listener John, earlier. He was down around, I believe, the Wahpeton area, and he said the roads are even slick, even down to our south, but he said they're doable. He was going about 25, he said, but like I said, the further north you go from the FM area northward or even east into Lakes Country, conditions markedly worse, and they're only going to get worse as we head into the evening hours. And again, between about 3 and 5 today, in and around the FM area and points south, we'll see a little break in the action. Winds will be light, but then don't let that fool you, because then we get in on the backside of the system. More snow and blowing snow. Additional snow this evening doesn't look to be a lot. Most of the snow is going to be between now and about 3:30 before it shuts off. Maybe an additional half inch to an inch on the backside of the system, but the winds are going to be the big problem, with significantly reduced visibility as we head into the evening and early overnight hours. So it's winter. I mean, we get these storms. Not a big surprise.
If you are planning any activities this afternoon, maybe you want to swing by the Coral Laundromat Studio and take care of a little laundry, you can drop it off and pick it up later, or you can hang out for a while and have a moment's peace, sort of the calm before the rest of today's storm. They've got multiple pay options available: Coin, Apple Pay, Google Pay, credit card, and more. And again, they are our sponsor. This is the Coral Laundromat Studio. When we return, we'll be with Max Steffes for On the Auction Block from Steffes Group. We'll be back. Thanks for joining us at the Coral Laundromat studio today for On the Auction Block. As I was leaving a restaurant from supper last night, I was stopped by a listener who actually he wanted to talk about a specific question when it came to real estate in farmland, and I knew the right guy to ask, and that was Max Steffes, who's joining us today from Steffes Group. All right, Max, are you ready to talk about northern Minnesota?
Yeah, I sure am. And it's funny. I got your voice memo last night, and I think it's a great topic and timely topic because we actually have a land auction coming up there in Roseau County.
Tell us about that land auction before we get to our listener question.
All right, I suppose. So the 17th of December, we're going to be selling 494 acres south and east of Roseau. Some pretty good land just east of Malung Township there. Malung Township is kind of the, if people are from Roseau, they know about Malung Township if they're in production agriculture. Pretty good land south of Roseau there.
I will have to ask the listener exactly where this land is at that they were talking about, and then also point out that it's good to be watching your auction coming up on the 17th because it's probably going to be a really good indicator of what's happening in that neighborhood this time of the year as far as real estate sales.
For sure. If you own land that adjoins a tract of land that has been recently sold at auction, usually that's a pretty good barometer for what your land is worth. Now, that's not to say that it's exactly what it's worth because land varies. We all know in production agriculture that land can vary quarter mile, eighth of a mile, even a couple hundred yards. Things change.
Well, the listener's question was this. Owns farmland in Roseau County, is considering selling it to a family member. And in that instance, doesn't necessarily need to hit the highest market value, but is looking for what would be a fair market value for land. That's productivity is about 80 to 85 bushels on wheat. You're probably getting about 1,500 pounds of sunflowers as a yield. And just where to start when it comes to getting ready to sell something like that. I suggested they just call you guys, but maybe this has to be done a little differently.
Yeah, shameless plug. If you want to know what it's worth, have an auction. I mean, that's the truest form of the fair market value of anything that you're selling. But if you've identified a purchaser that you'd like to sell to, there's a couple different approaches. Approach number one would be get an appraisal and have that be the basis of your conversation with that interested party. Scenario two would be, and what I always tell people is get a number from who you think wants to buy it and let them price it to you. Don't price it to them. Because if you price it to them and you say, for example, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to take it and gobble it up right away and you're going to be left wondering if they would have paid more. Scenario two, they're going to, and we're all Norwegian around here, right? So we're all nice. Well, I got to talk to my banker. Or let me talk to my wife, and then crickets. They don't call you back. That's their way of saying no. So, arm yourself with an appraisal, or, if you don't have that appraisal and you think you have a pretty good idea of where the market should be by talking to somebody like us, and we talk to people like that all the time, have them shoot you a number. So, hey, we're selling this land. We'd like to make a decision on XYZ date. We've considered you as a prospective purchaser. Let us know by Friday the 1st if you're interested or not, and if so, what price you'd be willing to pay. And just keep it cut
Max,
and dry that way.
Can you do the appraisal for someone who's, even if you're not part of the sale, can you do the appraisal for them as a service from Steffes?
So we are not licensed appraisers. So the appraisal is a professional practice, and that's a lot like being an electrician. You have to be an apprentice before you're an appraiser. Mm-hmm. So we provide broker price opinions, which are essentially opinions of value. And we do a fair amount of those, but our appraiser friends do the lion's share of valuations throughout the Red River Valley and in our trade areas.
And you're truly the benchmark, as you said, when you watch auctions. What happened on that Steffes sale is a pretty common comment that I hear. And folks are like, well, if I see what they're doing, I have a rough idea of what could be happening in my neighborhood as well. So
exactly,
call that a compliment. I think that's the right way to look at it.
Yep. And listener, if you're listening, that 17th sale, that should be a good barometer for you if that land is at all close to that.
And for those who are listening and have specific questions for Max, you don't have to be shy. You can call us on the JA Insurance phone line. That is 701-293-9000. one of the things you and I talked about in advance of today, Max, was you have a little experiment going on, something new and unique that you sent me in an email. Are you ready to visit about that?
Yeah, so we're going to be selling some Mindac shares at auction.
Oh, okay. Mindac, a sugar cooperative, right? So people need to know that that's what Mindac does. Oh, just making sure I didn't lose a connection to everybody.
We got you.
Okay, so Mindac has the sugar beet shares. It's not very often you see something like this come up to auction. So
No, it's not. And, you know, just a little history lesson for you, Bridgette, and the listeners. So we used to do we still do farm retirements, but we used to offer sugar beet shares before we would sell the equipment right out of the topper truck. And the way the cooperatives are structured now, it all needs to be approved by the board. So we got away from that. It was much more of a stringent approval process. So that's why we kind of went away from it. But Grandpa Bob would do them all the time in the 80s and the 70s and even the 60s. He'd offer the shares first and maybe sell some real estate, and then he would move into the equipment. So it's new for me in my 13 years that I've been doing this. But it's the first time I've ever offered sugar beet shares, but we're looking forward to it.
So have you been getting some calls and some curiosity as this is currently listed on your website?
For sure, Bridgette. And of course, the sugar deals changed quite a bit with the sugar market not being as robust as it was maybe a year or two ago. And if you crystal growers and you Mindac growers, you all know that. That's not news to you. So there's a big question mark on what those shares are going to be worth and what they're going to be valued at. So that's what everybody's wondering more than anything there. And obviously there's quite a few people that want to pick up those shares and hopefully buy them.
Absolutely. So speaking of picking things up to buy, you have 14 more land auctions coming up. You mentioned the one in Roseau. Where are some of the others?
Yeah, so regionally, we'll talk about the ones regionally because you guys don't want to listen about the Iowa ones. But Barnes County, we've got a quarter coming up on the 19th. It's right across from Arthur Company's location at Pillsbury, if folks listening know where that's at. So just across the street to the south. Nice quarter of farmland that's going to be selling. On the 23rd, we've got some land in Wilkin County, just south of Breckenridge, that's going to be selling 63 acres. So that's coming up. On the 23rd also, we've got a quarter of land selling south of Lynchburg, North Dakota, 160 acres. And on the 18th, don't forget about Willow City, McHenry County, North Dakota, 74 acres on the 18th. So there's a few auctions yet to conclude and to conduct this year yet. And, of course, we're talking about next spring as well. We've been booking a few land auctions for next spring, too.
It's almost the end of the year. Have you noticed an uptick in folks with a big curiosity about buying or selling land right now?
It seems like there's a lot of families that get together around Thanksgiving and Christmas and talk about transitioning, whether it's mom's land or dad's land or maybe land that they inherited from their uncle 20 years ago. So a lot of that's been going on. I would tell you that from a forecast perspective, I think this spring's going to be a little bit busier than it has been. And part of that is the big transitional wealth that's going on. There's supposed to be 300 million acres that trade hands in the next 10 years. And it's a mind-boggling number. I don't know what the total land area of North Dakota, I think it's like 72 or something like that. I'm sure some listener will correct me, but it's a big chunk of land. And a lot of that will be sold to brothers and sisters and existing tenants, but a certain percentage of that will hit the auction block. So I think we're going to be busy here this spring and into next year. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be some farmers that are going to have to sell some land, maybe a quarter or half section to generate some cash flow to be viable from the bank's perspective. But the majority of farmers are in good shape. I would tell you production agriculture is still very strong.
I had a conversation with a friend last night who said very much the same. There is a widening gap where you see those who are a little concerned about next year's finances. They might be trimming some items, whether it's equipment or a piece of land to generate some cash. And then on the other side, you have those who simply they did some forward contracting. They had an okay year. Nobody said that those margins were very thick, but they're going to come out of it okay and certainly be excited to farm again next year. You might be seeing something very much the same at this point, Max.
Absolutely. I think you just said it. And I call it the haves and have-nots a little bit. And some of that has to do with operational decisions. Some of that has to do with crop insurance and these disaster payments and how they're paid out. It seems like it's never just one thing that tips a farm over, but by and large, from what I'm seeing, there's still, importantly, if you're a land seller, there's still really good demand for land, both from investors and existing farmers. So that tells me that there's still a lot of strength in production agriculture, and that's what we like to see. Because when ag wins, everybody wins. And I don't care if you're a nurse at Sanford or an elevator in Hannaford. We need ag to be good.
And Max, for somebody out there listening saying, well, I am a nurse and why would I care? I mean, explain, right? I mean, seriously, explain why.
Well,
why that it's so important.
Farmers come to town and spend money, right? And, whether it's insurance, whether it's on equipment, whether it's on pickups, they keep the economy rolling.
Okay.
And viable businesses keep the wheel churning, if you will. And it might not be directly if you're a nurse at Sanford, but indirectly.
Right.
The overall well-being of the economy in this region is strongly tied to, obviously, healthcare, but secondly, agriculture.
Yeah,
yep.
No doubt.
Yeah. So, Max, if folks spend some time over the holiday Christmas table discussing potential sales, whether buying or selling, how can they reach you?
Swing by our office in Main Avenue. That would be the preferred method. We'll visit with you in person. But if you want to pick up the phone and call us, you, of course, can do that. Call our main office line there or visit our website at steffesgroup.com.
We really appreciate the fact that you come in every month and spend time talking about land auction. We do it again in 2 weeks with Brad Olstead, and we talk about equipment. And we do that for the Steffes Group on the auction block twice a month right here on Weather and Ag in Focus. Thank you, Max. When we return, we want to visit
we'll see ya.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Max.
you being here. We're going to visit with Dr. Emily Fox. She's with the Ashley Veterinary Clinic. There is a bit of a respiratory problem amongst horses, and it's affecting the NFR. Why? We'll find out. Thank you for following along, watching us on our live streams for Facebook, YouTube, Acres TV. We're at WDAY, Weather and Ag in Focus. And those are brought to you by Lighthouse Commodities. One of our very favorite guests is here today, and that's Dr. Emily Fox. She's with the Ashley Veterinary Clinic in Ashley, North Dakota. There is a bit of a problem going on in horses right now, and it's affecting the NFR. Can you tell us more? Why aren't people with horses getting them together the way they once did?
Sure. So, what you're referring to is what people are calling the equine herpes outbreak. There's
Hmm.
actually a lot of herpes viruses in horses. There's actually a lot of herpes viruses in general. There's over 100 herpes viruses out there in that family, and a lot of them affect other animals. Cattle have a herpes virus that's part of the BRD complex. There's ones of humans that obviously we're probably familiar with, like herpes simplex. There's also amphibians. I think, if I remember, fish have their own herpes virus. Um, and herpes viruses tend to cause a lot of damage to blood flow and specifically to the nervous system. That's kind of what they're known for. And they're also known for latency in general. So latency means coming on later. So things that can maybe hide in the body and recrudesce during stress. We hear a lot about that with herpes viruses in humans, right? And that can happen in animals as well. And historically, in horses, there are, I believe, 9 varieties of herpes. The ones we generally vaccinate for, there's about 3 main kind of families. There's EHV1, EHV3, and EHV4. Historically, most of the time, only breeders have worried about EHV3 and 4 because they're primarily things that affect the reproductive system or affect foals or foaling or pregnancy. EHV1, however, can affect things like pregnancy. It's also a respiratory disease that's seen frequently in young horses. And it's something that we also see a lot of late term abortions with, like we would with other parts. So, generally, mares in their last trimester. And specifically, there was a mutation within this particular herpes virus. So, EHV1 itself, we've been vaccinating for years. People say like they're going to give their horse their flu rhino vaccine. That's rhino pneumonitis, which is traditionally EHV1. But there is a mutation of EHV1 called EHM. So they'll call it EHV1 EHM. And EHM is the syndrome that comes from that form of EHV1. And that is a neurologic disease specifically associated with EHV1. So not all horses that get this EHV1 get this neurologic syndrome. But when they do, it's really serious. It can cause things like ataxia, so inability to move the body correctly. They can't stand up, which is obviously really, it's hard if a dog can't stand up or a human and you have to help them. But with horses, it's pretty disastrous. Horses aren't really meant to stay laying down for long periods of time. They tend to lose coordination, particularly in their hind end first. And one of the most common manifestations early on is that people will say that their horses are either dribbling urine or unable to urinate. And that's kind of usually an early manifestation of EHM. So there was an event, I believe, in November in Texas, and they had an EHM outbreak there. So this particular strain broke out. And then it kind of moved because it was a large event with horses from all sorts of states. It moved to other states. To my knowledge, to this date, Minnesota and North Dakota do not have any current outbreaks, but there was one horse that tested positive in South Dakota. I think that horse had contact with a horse that had been at this event, but I'm not sure on that. So that horse was quarantined, and to my knowledge, that hasn't moved at all. So this can be fatal in horses. It can also be really dangerous for the people taking care of the horses, not so much because the people are going to get it. Usually it's only transmitted to, I think, llamas and alpacas directly from horses. But the danger is these horses can also fall on you while you're trying to take care of them. A horse that's only able to control its muscles about halfway is an incredibly dangerous thing to try to control and can actually kill a human. So also caring for them can be really challenging. Now, as to the NFR, I am certainly not an expert on NFR, but I think that their decision probably has to do with the ease of transmission of this virus. So it's very easily transmitted. And there's a lot of horses coming from a lot of different places and getting really close together. I've had the good fortune to go to NFR and to see kind of behind the scenes. And you see those pens, they're fairly close together. This is a virus that's spread through respiratory secretions, so it can be airborne. It also has really good environmental persistence, which is great if you're the virus, but not so great for the rest of us. It survives in the environment. Typically for 7 days, but it can survive for up to 30 in optimal conditions, is my understanding, according to what USDA has said most recently. The really crummy thing about that is things that people don't think of can easily transmit it. your tools, if you're a veterinarian or a farrier and you're bringing your stuff to and from barns, your shoes, if you're a horse trainer and you go to a lot of different barns, tack, if you're buying tack on the internet, like if I was buying used bits right now, I'd probably be running them through the dishwasher a few times. No one wants to share a dishwasher with me, but I'd be running those through the dishwasher a bunch, or better yet, maybe just not using them for a while. And I would give them some good downtime. If I would probably avoid, I have been avoiding taking my horses anywhere. Fortunately, they don't go that many places, but I've been avoiding taking them anywhere. We've instituted some policies at our clinic to try to eliminate cross traffic between horses and also to take travel history into account when we're scheduling for horses. But the main thing right now for most average horse owners is if your horse doesn't have to travel or commingle with other horses, probably don't. Now, how to prevent this when there's not an active outbreak? I am not a big fan of shared water troughs at events. I do vet some
Okay.
endurance rides. You kind of have to share water troughs. You don't have a choice because you're on the trail, whatever. But anytime that you can avoid sharing buckets, sharing troughs, just tying your horse next to horses you don't know. There's a lot of other things other than equine herpes virus that horses can also transmit. And I generally try really hard to keep my horses away from other horses at events. I know that's not always possible depending on what discipline you ride in. And I think that's certainly true for some of these people who do rodeo disciplines. But I know that the NFR has taken this really seriously and they've put a lot of safeguards in place to try to avoid cross contamination, to avoid crossing the disciplines, to try to keep contacts traced. That's a big thing too, is if there is an outbreak, we need to know so that when those horses go home, they're quarantined, they don't get commingled with other horses and perpetuate this outbreak ongoing. So those kind of things are also really important. And I think most of the states are getting really good about contact tracing for these diseases. But
Hmm.
certainly, I think it's important to remember if you don't have to take your horse anywhere right now, I personally would try to avoid it. Obviously, not to the detriment of your horse, but certainly really take precautions and do be cleaning yourself if you go see a friend's horses, whatever.
Uh-huh.
Wash your clothes or wash your hands, change your clothes. I do all those things regularly if I see horses before I go home to my own horses, when there's an outbreak going on. And anytime I see a sick horse, I do that as well.
Okay, I got a million questions here. Hold on. All right. With outbreaks like this, is it rather uncommon to see them? Because I feel like I haven't gotten wind of something like this in quite some time.
So, EHM, I don't remember when the last big outbreak was. You occasionally, I think, see a few spontaneous mutations, but a lot of the time they're either they go undiagnosed, right? Because it's actually is somewhat, they usually diagnose it based on clinical signs, but it can look like other things. It can look like West Nile, it can look like other things. But the other thing is, if there's no travel history on that horse, usually they're fairly contained, right? If for some reason I had an EHM outbreak in my own horse or something, it doesn't go anywhere. But the biggest problem is when it happens at a big event like this. And it does happen periodically. I would say in the horse community, probably every couple years, I feel like I hear about it. But I think you may not be hearing about it too, because it depends on if it's affecting this part of the country and if it's affecting a discipline you're involved in. So I think a lot of people heard about this one because it's affecting the NFR and because it's affecting so many states. I hear about more of the ones that happen in English riding disciplines. And it tends to be kind of horse centric areas. This one started in Texas, these big events. So it's really when we have commingling of large groups of horses. But no, a lot of equine herpes virus is fairly contained also because a lot of it doesn't turn into EHM. We do hear about large groups of horses having abortion storms on bigger breeding facilities, but fortunately, the vaccines are fairly effective against those kind of outbreaks. The problem is the EHM kind of mutation type behavior is fairly new. This wasn't really a huge thing when I was younger, and it's certainly getting more common. It used to be considered very rare, and it still is fairly rare. So the vaccines haven't seemed to be fully effective yet. There are some people who think that you at least get some reduction in transmission, if not reduction in symptoms, from an EHV1 vaccine like your flu rhino vaccine, but nobody's proven efficacy against EHM to my knowledge. And that's part of it too, is we really don't have a great vaccine control program.
And Emily, with the cold weather, does that help stop the spread into the northern states, or does that not even matter?
I don't think so, is my understanding. In fact, I often wonder if it's almost worse because this is the time of the year when we tend to be grouping things in barns and doing like barn stabling, and less people are hauling in and more people want an overnight stall. So I certainly don't, to my understanding, it's not one of these things that, cold weather can just kind of break down the virus. It's not like rabies, which is incredibly, like, you get rabies out in the sunshine and rabies goes away. It's one of these things that I think, if I recall, can persist despite extreme heat or cold to some extent. And so I don't necessarily know that that's true. And if you have animals coming together and you put them, say, in a pen together, they do like to actually be physically close when it's cold out. So that might actually be worse.
Okay. Bridgette, Mike's not. There we go.
There we go. I want to ask what else is in your dishwasher, but I don't think anybody else wants to know besides the bit that's used for your horses. So
Nothing
we'll
too bad, I promise.
Okay, good. Well, Emily, thank you, because I had heard people talk about not taking their horses to NFR to compete. So whether it's barrel racing, team roping, etc., just to avoid this type of a problem. Hopefully, we can see things curve downward, so we don't have to worry about outbreaks continuing, etc. And we really appreciate the fact that you always have exactly what we need to know, especially about how to prevent transmission, people carrying it from horse to horse. So thanks for the time today.
No problem. Have a great day.
Thanks, Emily. And when we come back, we'll recap the road reports and take a look at radar, all of that and more. And if we have time, Bridget's got a couple of ag topics to hit as well when we come back. And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. And temperatures out there in the 20s, most of the area. A few 30s, let's say from, we're looking at Jamestown's at 37. Valley City area right around the freezing mark, and down to Lisbon into Wahpeton areas between 32, 34. John, one of our listeners, he's in Wahpeton on the road, said roads in Wahpeton, a little bit of rain, sleet, temperatures right around freezing. Roads are okay, not the best. The further north you go, obviously, you get towards the FM area and points northward, and totally snow-covered with moderate snow across the area. We're seeing a break now out around, let's say the Castleton area. So you go west on 94, and we're seeing a break in the activity as that area of low pressure gets a little closer. We'll kind of shut the precip off for a little bit, and we'll more than likely mix in a little freezing drizzle with that as well from the 94, right around that 94 corridor and southward, although temperatures to our south a little bit warmer. And then to our north, we're looking at snow continuing throughout the afternoon and evening. And it looks like, taking a look at our updated watches, warnings, we do have, let's see, winter storm warning now has been extended into Clay County. So that does include the Moorhead area, does not include Cass County, and mainly being is the Weather Service won't issue a warning for, let's say, a quarter of the county. So we're going to have near warning criteria as we head after 6 o'clock tonight due to the blowing snow, with winter storm warnings just north of Fargo all the way up to the Canadian border. So winter storm warnings across much of the area. And again, we're looking at total snowfall across the FM area, 3-4 inches before all is said and done. But the problem is going to be, as I said, after about 6-7 o'clock tonight, when the winds really pick up out of the northwest. They'll be gusting between 35 and 50, and that's going to produce a lot of blowing snow. Now, the window on those strong winds only goes till about midnight before they start to relax a little bit. So it's going to be, we'll have a rough 4 or 5 hours of extremely poor visibility, and it looks like a near blizzard conditions across parts of the area after 6-7 o'clock tonight. So we'll see a little lull in the activity around the FM area, like I said, between about 2:30 and 2:30, 5 o'clock, before more snow comes back in and those winds start to turn to the northwest. So not a huge storm system, Bridgette, but it's enough to cause a lot of problems out there with some pretty nasty road conditions right now.
All right, keep your eyes peeled. And in fact, I just had a listener send me an email, and that is on my ag@flagfamily.com email box that is sponsored by Superior Grain Equipment. And that email says, do you guys ever have crashes on that camera that's facing I-29? So apparently they're just curious if we see a crash, and maybe we can zoom in on it next time when it happens.
Yeah.
We'll just keep that in mind for what's going on.
Let's hope we don't have to worry about that.
I would prefer, it's nice to have the live stream. I'm not sure I need the accident cam right there out of the studio. And so I can see traffic certainly slow down for the day. That is the right thing to do.
No doubt about it. Leave a lot of extra time. And again, conditions will rapidly go downhill due to the wind after about 6 o'clock tonight. So that'll do it for Bridgette and myself. Don't go anywhere. The Jay Thomas Show, that's coming up next.